Hey there, Ryan the Ride Mechanic here. I was asked recently from one of my other videos if I have come across any funny evacuation stories. And I didn't really have too much for it, but I'd like to share a couple things that may be amusing. So let's talk about it.
Now get ready. Here we go.
So it's no question that when rides get stuck, that we got to get people off of them. Most of the time there's nothing really funny that's happening here. It's quite a serious situation. Most of the time people, despite the fact that we're up there and getting people off of rides with no problem, we practice for it, we do it all the time, people genuinely believe that they're in danger. So the atmosphere is typically not that light. So I don't really have too many like funny stories in that aspect. But there are some times when rides have broken down where we get there and we kind of have to scratch our head and we're like, oh, really? Huh, that's weird. One of the things that we get quite often is kiddie rides. Little kids rides that you find at the carnivals and stuff like that. They break down and sometimes they get stuck out of position. Well, a kid's ride getting stuck out of position is not that far out of position. If they lift up and tilt like a swing ride, or if it's like a Zamperilla jump around or something where the gondolas are 4 feet off the ground, there's not much. What has to happen is when the ride malfunctions, the operator has to keep the perimeter secure because that ride is in an unknown state. It could start back up at any moment. There's all sorts of things that can happen. So typically they hit the e-stop and then they have to keep the perimeter closed. But when you have an unruly crowd of parents that don't understand why their 6-year-old kid is on that ride and why they're not getting off of that ride, you typically can't hold parents back that much. And by the time maintenance arrives there, we've happened several times, we get there, they called the ride out that it was loaded with people on it. We get there, the ride is empty. And we're like, what happened? And the kid said, the parents just rushed the exit, opened the doors up, and forced their way inside the ride perimeter and took their kids off. And that's kind of funny. It's like, okay, well, there's nothing you could do to stop that. At the same time, if you're ever faced with a scenario like that, that's extremely dangerous. That machine, you don't know what's going on with that machine. The safest place for those people is inside that seat, and the safest place for you is outside of that ride perimeter. So no matter what you think, never go inside of a ride perimeter unless somebody tells you to do that and you're escorted or allowed to. Pretty much no matter what the ride is. So that's kind of a serious note, but I wanted to make that out there. It's like, the stuff's there for your safety. You know, make sure you abide by it. Our operations staff has to, so you should too. I was dispatched to our floorless coaster one time, and the ride had overshot. It wasn't homed. And what happened was the first couple of rows went past the load point, and the train had already come into transfer track behind it. So when that happens, we can't back the train up because now the ride's faulted because the train is over its position. So now the ride, out of safety, is unsure where that train is. So it's not going to let it back up at all because the ride can't guarantee that it's not going to back up into the vehicle in the block behind it. So for safety, it won't let it back up. So what we have to do is force the train out forward. We can set it into manual mode and move the motors forward. We could jog them forward and then send the train back around the track. Well, the operations staff wants to get everyone to buy into that before they do that. So they go around and they ask the entire train and they say, hey, if we can let you guys ride again, you know, in basically 2 minutes when you're done with the ride again, you back, we'll unload you, it won't be a big deal. What they don't tell them is otherwise it's like we have to go through the evacuation procedures, which could be another 30, 45 minutes until you're off the train. And that's no fun for anybody. So there was this one train I went up to, and it was sitting there overshot, means too far outside the station. And we did that. We said, hey, do you guys want to ride again? And they went through and asked everybody on the train. They got to somebody on the front row where we couldn't build platforms to get out to them or anything, so we had to physically come along the train backwards or push it out forward. So we asked them, and there was someone on there, and they said, no, I don't want to go. And realistically, in all honesty, that's out of your control. We're going to do whatever we need to get the ride unloaded safely. And your comfort zone is honestly not part of the park's safety program. Most people have to step outside their comfort zone to get onto rides in the first place. But this person said no, they don't want to do it. And so the operator came back to me and said, they don't want to do it. What do we do? And I told the ride supervisor, I said, we can evacuate the train and transfer. That'll take 30 minutes. And then after that evacuation, we would have to literally come along that train backwards. And I've done that once before. It took about 45 minutes to move the train about 40 feet. Because trains are long. They're 40 to 50 feet long on average. So I told operations, it's like, that's going to be like an hour and a half worth of time that everyone's going to be upset. I'm like, if they don't want to ride again, that's fine, but we need to get them onto the lift hill just on the other side and evacuate from there, because we have platforms we can assemble that the whole process will be done in 30 minutes if we just get them on the lift hill. So they went back and asked the person, hey, can we move you on the lift hill? And that person said no. So it came back and they said, well, they said no, what do we do? And he gave me a look and I gave him a look. Kind of like that. And we kind of all looked around and said, okay, ooh, is the load platform clear? Yeah, the load platform's clear. And I said, okay, I switched it into manual mode and I said, let me try this real quick. I'm going to try to back you guys up. Hold on a second. And then I must have hit the wrong button. I think I hit the wrong button because the train went forward. Anyways, the train got on the lift hill. We evacuated it from there, but that was one of those things that I was not present for the rest of that evacuation because there was probably going to be someone really mad on the other side of that lift hill. But again, you're not in control in that scenario. It's the park's in control of that one. So you're just a passenger. As much as you want to have input, you're still just a passenger. We have to, in that case, we have to make the decision for 32 people what's in their best interest and yours, and the safest thing and easiest, quickest thing to do to get everybody on their way again. One of the first rides I took care of was an SLC coaster made by Vekoma. The restraints at the time had a really big flaw in them, not in a dangerous way, but it was a flaw to where the ratcheting paw mechanism would break. And unlike what you see in movies and stuff like that, when you have some component failure inside the restraint system, it doesn't let you out, it keeps you in. You're essentially pinned into that seat for much longer than you want to be. So, but it would happen quite often with that ride, and I had a service kit put together of special tools just to deal with that very quickly. So it was kind of funny. I got up to the platform, and what happens in that case is that the whole train is empty except for one person sitting in the seat, and nothing they can do or operations can do to get that person out. I physically have to open the seat back and dismantle part of the restraint system. Now you'd say, oh, there's one person stuck on the ride. Actually, there's 21 people stuck on the ride because there's a train sitting out there in the reduction brakes that's waiting to come into the station. So you got 20 people on that train plus the person in there. And remember, it's always hot and sunny and people want to get off because the adrenaline's now gone. So I thought it was funny. I try to keep the people in the best spirits possible, because sometimes people freak out in that scenario. Sometimes they're okay. And I start off and I just try to get the scenario. I'm like, hey, how's it going? My name's Ryan. I try to get a joke in there to help people ease down. My name's Ryan. Is this your first time being stuck in a ride? Oh, yeah. It's like, okay, it's my first time working on this ride. And then I walk behind there and say, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. This happens occasionally. I'll explain to him. It says this little component that's failed internally. We're going to open it up real quick and get you out of there. And this one particular gentleman, he is like, you can do it. I know you can. And he was very optimistic and happy about it. So at one point, he had the whole station of people waiting there because everyone else is watching too. This is like a soap opera. They had the whole station going, Ryan, Ryan, Ryan. And you sit there kind of like a locksmith, because there's 4 individual things. That's 2 you can override. You have to like pull the mechanism this way, reach around, grab a screwdriver and pull it this way. And then like a locksmith, you have to take another screwdriver and stick it in between all that, and then pry the assembly open just until the dog unlocks. And you hear the click and the restraint opens for the person, and the crowd goes nuts. Oh, they love it. It's kind of a good feeling when you get someone out, because the people in the crowd are high-fiving and stuff. It's it's quite a unique scenario. Most of the time we just tag the seat out, and after a handful of runs we tag those 2 seats out so the row's dead, and then we open the ride back up, and then night shift fix that. But Vekoma, shortly after that, they resolved the problem. Pretty good fix, actually. Once they implemented their fix for that, there was, I don't recall ever having a problem with that thing again. So that was pretty awesome on their part. Good engineering on their end. That was great. One of the questions that does always come up is, do people ever ask for stuff when they're getting evacuated? And the answer is yes, all the time. People ask for stuff. What's in most of your minds right now is not what they ask for, actually. Most people right now are probably thinking, oh, I'd ask for another day of admission or free parking or something like that. It's actually not the case. The number one thing that always seems to be asked for when something is asked for during an evacuation, the number one thing that always comes up every time, regardless, I wonder if this is across other amusement parks too, is a funnel cake. Normally when you have to go off and get people off of rides in a odd location, the first thing they ask for is, oh, can we get free funnel cakes from this? It's funny because it's operations gets together with food services, and I don't know if these people get funnel cakes from that, but operations typically says, we'll see what we can do. But I know the park's not required to give you anything by any stretch of the imagination, but if they want to, they can. But as long as the evacuation goes as planned and you're escorted off the ride in a reasonable amount of time, there's typically nothing that's given off of that. Yeah, if it's something much longer than normal happens, then you might be compensated something, maybe an extra free pass to come back a different day or something like that. But that's kind of a really unusual circumstance for that sort of stuff. The Skyrocket 2 would break down from time to time, and it was a 6-swing LSM style ride, so it would break down from time to time, and the train would sometimes just pass home in one direction, either forwards or backwards, depending on which way the fault or error occurred. But a lot of times it would pass the home position and go forward, and we would have to push the train backwards about 50 or 60 feet to get it to unload. So what's funny is that we go out there with some mechanics and and operations alike, and we'd start pushing the train backwards, and sometimes we get a train full of people that would decide to have fun with the situation. And trains don't push easy. They're not easy to roll. Amazing roller coasters don't roll on their own. But we'd be pushing the train back really hard, and they'd be just going like not even half the speed of walking, but guests were doing their best. They're like, woo! And they got their hands up, and they're like, oh my gosh, we're going so fast. And they were having a good time. That's always nice to see when guests participate in the problem. Anyways, that's all I have for today. Just wanted to share a couple more stories with you. I got some good feedback on these from people, so I thought you guys would like to know too. Let me know what else you want to hear me talk about, or maybe I could show you something. Not quite sure. Well, one of the downsides to working in the industry I did for 14 years is that you do it so much. I never thought about the after effects. I never thought to keep all the pictures and stuff that I had. I have a lot of pictures, but not a ton. But yeah, I never thought to keep that stuff to do this sort of thing later on. So I'm kind of starting from scratch again. It's kind of an odd thing. But anyways, I'm Ryan the Ride Mechanic. Like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you liked it, didn't like it, want to hear more future topics you want to hear about. Again, have a good day. Talk to you later. Bye.